President Zelensky has repeatedly urged the European Union to speed up its entry process. Is it possible to do so?
We have to be realistic in the sense that this is not just like joining the EU is not like joining a fitness club or a tennis club. No, joining the EU means joining the club, but also building the club. We are not fearful at all in extending the offer of membership to Ukraine. The EU is open for any democratic and peaceful country with what we call a European vocation to join. We are not offensive, let me stress that very, very clearly. We are defensive. Russia started this war, Russia has to end this war.
Halo teman kumparan, to the point kali ini bersama saya Alia Bunga. Indonesia sebagai tuan rumah sekaligus pemegang presidensi dikabarkan tetap mengundang Rusia untuk datang ke KTT G20 pada akhir 2022 nanti. Rencana kehadiran Rusia ini mengundang perdebatan dunia terkait invasi yang dilakukan negara beruang merah itu ke Ukraina. Penolakan muncul dari negara-negara barat, khususnya Uni Eropa yang memberikan banyak sanksi bagi Rusia. Apa yang mendasari pemberian sanksi hingga penolakan kehadiran Rusia di KTT G20? Telah hadir di studio kumparan Duta Besar Uni Eropa untuk Indonesia, Mr. Ambassador Vincent Piket. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us today.
Terima kasih banyak.
Let's get to the point, shall we? Okay.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Needless to say, the Russian invasion on Ukraine has struck nerves on countries across the globe. Which begs this question, how has it particularly impacted members of the European Union?
This is a crisis of the severest gravity. For us, it goes deep to the bone of European politics, European societies and individuals. We've been working in Europe for peace and stability ever since the Second World War. The European Union is a peace project. We have gradually expanded that space of peace over the past 70 or so years, and to see this happen in Europe was quite unimaginable up to the moment when it happened. And so the impact is severe. It's in political and psychological terms. Second, of course, there is the many impacts as regards the economy. The war has driven energy prices up. It's disturbing the commodities market, the grains and wheat, etc. And so pushed up inflation in the EU. Thirdly, humanitarian. In the space of the past 4 weeks alone, more than 3 million Ukrainian refugees entered the EU seeking shelter. And that, of course, is a tremendous impact for the neighboring EU member states, neighboring to Ukraine, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania and Bulgaria. So that is a major impact we have to deal with as well.
And recently, delegations from the European Union visited Kiev in an effort to convey their support for Ukraine. What exactly encompasses that? Well,
it means that we are totally determined to help Ukraine overcome this crisis. This is a crisis with an innovation that was unprovoked. There was no objective reason at all. There was no threat by the Ukraine against Russia at all. It was an innovation that is illegal. If you look at the UN Charter, of which Russia is a signatory, then it's very clear that there shall be no use of force or the threat of the use of force against countries unless in self-defense. And now, there was no case of self-defense here at all. So we are fully supportive of Ukraine in this matter, of its territorial integrity. It is just not possible in the modern world that one country invades another, just as it has happened now with in the case of Russia. That's just not done. Imagine it in your own situation. So we are steadfast and strongly behind Ukraine on this matter. We are asking Russia to cease fire, to stop the shelling, to stop the targeting and killing of civilians, and to withdraw the troops unconditionally, so that by doing that, the space will open for negotiations for a long-lasting solution.
So that's the actions and measures that taken by the European Union to mediate between the two countries.
Indeed.
Indeed, yes. But at this moment, do they bear any result?
Well, you see what's happening on the ground. The Russian attacks continue, missile attacks from Russia, Russian soil, and from Belarus, and from inside Ukraine, happen against strategic objects, civilian objects, against cities. Look at the images coming to us every day of bombings of cities, of housing, of apartment buildings. So that is still going on, and it has to stop. This is a war crime in international law. Targeting and killing of civilians is a war crime. Secondly, of course, we are pleased to see that there is a negotiation happening between Ukraine and Russia today, or the European Day, in Istanbul. We very much hope that this will lead to a result. We hope that Russia will enter these negotiations with sincerity, and that we can look towards the beginning of a solution.
We really hope we find a solution as soon as possible. And President Zelensky has repeatedly urged the European Union to speed up its entry process. Is it possible to do so? And can you shed some light on that?
Well, the European Union leaders, so the heads of states and the heads of government, repeated last Friday that Ukraine is welcome to join, and that the procedure to make that happen should be pursued. We have to be realistic in the sense that this is not just like joining the EU is not like joining a fitness club or a tennis club. You pay and you do your sports. No, joining the EU means joining the club, but also building the club, because you have to implement the whole of the mechanisms of the EU on your soil. So there is some preparation
and huge responsibility
involved. But we all know that this is an extreme situation, unprecedented, and the European Union will want to be creative and so that we can be forthcoming to Ukraine, and in order to give a perspective, a very firm perspective for the Ukrainian people to persevere.
And President Zelensky has also claimed that NATO is fearful of Russia. Is there any truth in that?
Well, some of our member states, many of our member states are NATO members, but not all, and so we have our separate identity. We are not fearful at all in extending the offer of membership to Ukraine. The EU is open for any democratic and peaceful country with what we call a European vocation to join, and that has been extended to many countries in the past and successfully, and so we will pursue down the track, and there's no fear involved in that at all.
And so European Union is not at all fearful of Russia. That's the truth.
We are not, and there is no reason for Russia to be fearful of it, because look at the past enlargements of the EU, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, countries like Poland, the Baltic states, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria. This has been a completely peaceful process, bringing stability and prosperity to a part of Europe that used to be behind the Iron Curtain. And there has been no impact at all, no implication at all of any risk or danger for Russia. So Russia, as I said, it has no need, no reason to be fearful of an EU enlargement to Ukraine whatsoever.
The next question is kind of related to the European Union has also considered the Russian oil embargo as the next step in imposing sanctions. What makes this a good decision?
Well, the bottom line is that we are too dependent on Russian energy in general, gas and oil. Our goal is very, very clear. We want to bring that down rapidly. Even before this war, we had that goal because as part of our green and renewable energy policy. But now clearly there is a political necessity and political urgency to do that much faster than we had thought. So we're going to stock up gas massively in the course of this year to make sure that by the European winter we will have enough in store to be ready for whatever. We're diversifying our supply. We're traveling around the globe to producing countries in order to purchase oil and gas, and that will definitely bring an alleviation of lessening of the dependency on Russia very quickly.
And how secure are the European Union countries that they could withstand the byproducts of this war with the oil and gas in Europe? Are they able to wriggle out of Russia's grip on them?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Let's put it this way. We know that there is a cost in this. There is a pain for the European Union, and as a result of this war caused by Russia. Totally unjustified, but it is a fact. Secondly, we know that we have to suffer this pain now, because if we don't do it now, the cost later on will be much higher. So we know that the energy prices are high, that the wheat prices and other commodities are less available on the market. Indonesia faces that also to some extent. And so the European Union will make sure that we have funding available for helping the lower income households during this period with some support for their gas bill, for instance. We're also helping companies that are very much hit by the higher gas and oil prices with some support to weather this period. So we are ready for it. We know it will be tough, but there's no other way forward than the one that we have chosen now.
I see. Mr. Ambassador, the Kremlin claimed that the European Union is incapable of entirely isolating Russia. What do you have to say on that?
You're right. Russia continues to be having warm relations with countries like North Korea, like Syria, like Eritrea, and like Belarus. Those are the four countries that supported Russia in the vote in the United Nations. 140 countries voted against Russia.
140.
So 140. So it shows you very clearly that Russia is isolated, is internationally, and that it will have to be held accountable to the international community. The 140 peace-loving and law-respecting countries for what it has done. So I'm not impressed by the claim that you have quoted from the Kremlin.
Well, above all, that Moscow is still confidently that it will be able to survive for a relatively long time despite the sanctions imposed by a number of those countries. Can you share your thought on that?
Well, our sanctions are the largest we've ever taken. It's not that we like taking sanctions, but we have got to do it. We've said we are not going to fight the war in Ukraine ourselves. We are using non-military tools to bring Russia to ceasefire and to withdraw its troops. Our sanctions aim to basically cripple the financing capacity of the war in Russia. We have locked Russian firms out of the international financial system. We have put sanctions on hundreds of individuals that directly or indirectly support the Kremlin, that support the war, or that are complicit in this war. We have locked Russia out of the European airspace for civil aviation, so that no Russian plane will be landing or flying through European airspace for as long as this conflict lasts. We're working to limit Russia's role and participation in international fora, whether it's the IMF or the World Bank or the Civil Aviation Organization and similar. So all of this is having an impact. You can expect according to the figures we know, an 18% contraction of the Russian economy. The ruble is down by 30%. The stock exchange is barely open, so companies are unsellable. The Russian debt, the government debt, has junk status. So in other words, this is massive. It may take some time for this to really strike the core objective of us of stopping the financing capacity, but it will, and we will pursue until we have reached the goal.
So do you think that's the best decision, that sooner or later Russia will stop the war?
That is what we're after, and not just us, but 140 countries, I keep on quoting them, want exactly that thing.
But on the other hand, Russia still expresses its openness for cooperation with the West in those very sectors. Would this affect the sanctions imposed on Russia at all, keeping in mind that there is no guarantee that it will stop the war?
I think that the first action has to come from Russia. Russia started this war unprovoked and illegal. Russia has to end this war, and immediately and unconditionally. Now, once withdraw its troops, so that we are back to a status quo. So then, but when that happens, then of course the question about lifting sanctions comes on the table, and not before.
And how has the European Union braced itself in accommodating millions of refugees, like you mentioned before, scattered around the countries for an indeterminate amount of time, like 3 million of refugees, like you said, right?
Yeah. Now, let's first of all still not forget the refugees that are in Ukraine right now, and the UN organizations have estimated that more than 7.5 million people are displaced internally. So that's almost
internally 7 million still in Ukraine.
So that's 70% of the Jakarta population has no home to stay. Then from those 3 million have now entered the European Union. Our offer was almost immediate, to open our borders to all Ukrainian refugees to come to the EU, to stay with us, to get shelter, hospital care, to get the right to work, and for the kids to get the right to schooling, and up to a year or as much as is needed. We hope it won't be needed, but that is the offer. And this is a tremendous challenge, of course, for our neighboring member states, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Bulgaria and Romania. But it's not a challenge that they face alone, because within the EU we have a system for sharing that burden of accommodation amongst all member states, and that is working reasonably well. It's of course a big job from one day to the next, but we'll make it happen. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I should say is that it's absolutely astounding how private citizens, how private households are opening up to these poor people that are shelled out of their houses, out of their cities and towns in Ukraine. So private citizens are giving shelter in their own homes with a little bit of a subsidy, of course, support from the member state governments, from the EU, to help them, to shelter them at home. So that is a fantastic thing to observe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And how will the flight ban in Russian airspace affect countries in the European Union?
I don't think very much at all. We're not concerned about that. I think Russia is more concerned about the ban on the airplanes to enter European airspace or to land on European ports, a ban that is also implied by many other countries. You may know that most of the Russian airlines have been sanctioned as well. It means that those airlines will not be able to get servicing of their planes from the suppliers, the manufacturers, will not be able to get spare parts. So I wonder how long these airplanes can safely stay in the skies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mr. Ambassador, like I have mentioned before, there are questions from our readers, actually only one. May I read it for you?
Please.
Okay. The reader's question is from Instagram account Sulu, and the question is, why is the European Union so focused on sending aid to Ukraine? What does it gain from that? Then the second one, what is the difference between US and Russia? Considering that the US attacked sovereign countries such as Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Iran, and they killed the leader of that country. Maybe you have some opinion on that.
Two very different questions.
Yeah.
Let me start with the first.
Okay.
And we are committed to democracy and to peace in Europe. And in the case of Ukraine, democracy and peace have been rudely disturbed by an invasion, illegal and unprovoked invasion by Russia of Ukraine. So Ukraine is a very close partner of the European Union. We have an agreement that literally says that Ukraine can expect to be joining the Union when it is ready to do so. So that is a very close partnership, and for that reason we are supporting Ukraine so much. Secondly, not forget that Ukraine borders on 5 member states of the European Union. The European Union, 5 European Union member states in addition border on Russia. So we are in a zone of uncertainty and insecurity presently, and we will do everything as we can and as needed as European Union to bring back that security. We are not offensive, let me stress that very, very clearly. We are defensive, we have no armies, we have only military and defense cooperation that is aimed at protecting our own membership, our own territory, and that's what we will do. And protecting and restoring peace in Ukrainian fits into that. And lastly, why do we do it? Is of course for humanitarian reasons. You can't, in a modern world, You can't suffer watching these horrible images on television of in the city of in the south coast of Ukraine, Mariupol. Used to be 500,000. There's now 100,000 people left in a city under siege, shelled to pieces in a horrible way, without any commiseration by the military of Russia for the innocent lives that are being lost. So you just can't accept that to happen. You have to support and help a country that is in such need, just for that reason alone.
But does it give you something, like what did you gain from that?
Well, we gain that we can help the people that need help, and we have the capability to do it. The EU is fortunately has the money to do that, and it is our duty. So it's as simple as that. As a member of the UN, of the law-abiding group of nations around the world, the member states and the European Union have that moral and political duty in Ukraine. You want to hear about the second question as well?
Yeah.
You know,
very interesting.
There is no easy comparisons with one crisis and the other and what happened. And that sort of analysis is good for historians and analysts, but it doesn't help us in addressing the situation we find right now. And the situation we find right now is a country under attack, unprovoked and illegally by Russia, and we have to deal with that fact. We have mobilized together 140 countries to tell Russia this has got to end, and we will pursue that political track with our partners around the globe. Not just, this is not about East and West, and let me stress that as well.
Yeah, just about
this is global.
East and West.
This is a global worry, a global fear that global stability, global peace is at risk unless this is solved. So that is what we need to do right now.
That's the question from our audience. Thank you so much for your answer. And the next question is about the G20 summit. Does the European Union condemn Russia's participation in the upcoming G20 agenda as well? Is this a criticism also directed at Indonesia as the president of G20? What do you think?
We are supporting Indonesia wholeheartly and with everything we can offer to make the G20 presidency a success. We are happy to see Indonesia in this role, the first time ever.
Yeah.
And the agenda that Indonesia has sketched is a good one, and we look forward to successfully concluding that with our full support. Secondly, we have said to Indonesia that this is the Russian invasion of Ukraine means that there cannot be business as usual. The facts have happened, and that it will be very, very difficult for the EU leaders to attend political level meetings if Russia is present. So that is what we have informed and our Indonesian partners of, and so the debate is ongoing.
G20 emphasizes global economic recovery in these unsettling times. Would boycotting Russia be considered as a violation of the rights of Russian citizens then? What do you think?
Well, my answer would be that Russia should first of all start respecting the rights of Ukrainian citizens.
So they need to support the Ukraine.
Absolutely. I mean, Russia started this war. Russia has to end this war and can end it from the day to one day to the next. And so withdraw the troops, ceasefire, and come to the negotiation table in a sincere effort for a lasting, durable solution. And on our sanctions, we know that these affect, some of these, not all, affect Russian citizens, and which is regrettable. And because, and let me stress that very clearly, we are not enemies of the Russian people. We live jointly on this European continent. It's hard to imagine how many interactions there normally are between us and Russia, between European companies and Russian companies, between European citizens and Russian citizens. Now, all that has been totally ruptured by the fact that the government of Russia and the president of Russia have invaded this other country. Mm-hmm. So it is first of all the task for the Russian leaders and the Russian government to look after the interests of its own people, and so it's not the principal responsibility for the EU to undertake.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying that the full responsibility is actually at Russia's side? Accountable.
Of course.
They start and they are the one who needs to end.
Like that's our position. Russia started this war. Mm-hmm. Russia has to end this war.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Ambassador, that will be all. Thank you so much for your time with Kumparan. We really appreciate your presence here.
Thank you very much indeed for receiving me in your beautiful studio.
Thank you so much.
You.
Teman Kumparan, demikian perbincangan kami dengan Duta Besar Uni Eropa untuk Indonesia, Mr. Vincent Piket. Saksikan berbagai tayangan wawancara eksklusif Kumparan lainnya hanya di YouTube dan website Kumparan. Saya Alia Bunga beserta segenap tim yang bertugas pamit undur diri. Terima kasih dan sampai jumpa.